Hello and welcome to BAL Tiling Facebook Live. My name's Dave Rowley and I'm the training and technical manager. Also today we've actually got support from David Hilton, who's the technical support manager for the Midlands, and also Phil Jenkins, who's the content and PR manager. Phil will actually be using the cameras today, and also David will be mixing the products and supporting me over the next hour. So, what I want to do first, before we actually get started, you've had obviously probably notification already, but in case you haven't, if you actually, over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, if you put hi in the text box, but also put a question, what you will get, you will receive a thermal mug. And that will obviously be sent to you after the event. So those questions will be relayed by Phil. Obviously, if we don't get able to answer all your questions, we will obviously put that in the text box and answer any questions during the event, but also afterwards as well. So what is the topic for today? Cold weather, tiling in cold conditions. Obviously, as you can appreciate, this time of the year, we're up against temperature, and that can have a serious impact on tiling. And that's what we're going to focus on today, and some of the products that you can use alternatively in those type of situations. So let's kick things off. Cement-based powdered products are in the BAL obviously range, set and harden through hydration. So you add water and it hydrates the cement, which obviously allows it to dry. The rate of the actual, the rate of the setting and temperature, the setting and the hardening of these products actually dry by hydration, as far as they actually dry through the temperature. So basically, let's start again. The ambient temperature of the airflow, if it's got to be above 5 degrees. Otherwise, this can have a serious impact on the actual set itself. But more importantly, you may or may not be aware, it also can affect the products by the substrate. The substrate temperature also will affect its actual drying as well. So basically, if you can imagine, in hotter temperatures, you're probably all familiar, products go off very quickly. That can also have a damaging effect on the adhesive, but also working with the products, of course, but also this can happen seriously in colder conditions. So what we want to do now is we've actually done a little test here at Building Adhesives to really give you and prove to you. We'll show you a video in a second. But basically, what we've done is we've actually taken a standard setting adhesive. And what we did is out of the one bag, we actually separated and put some of the powder in a temperature of 23 degrees and also the water that we're going to mix with that, and left that in conditions for 24 hours. We also did the same with another amount of powder, standard setting adhesive, and also the water as well, and put that in the fridge and left that in the fridge at 6 degrees. All right? Left that for 24 hours, poured them out, mixed the right water with the right amount of powder, and create some cylinders which were actually 40 mil in diameter and 25 mil in height. So what I do is we're going to show this video now, and you'll see they've been left to dry for 24 hours, and then we've put them into a machine which actually then presses the actual adhesive and does a test on the strength itself. So just bear a second, you'll see the video popping up in a minute. So what this does is actually test the compressive strength of the product. It's not showing?
Not working.
It's not working.
Sorry.
Technical difficulty. Okay, well, we could always maybe put that on a feed on the messenger after the event. Well, basically what's happened is we have a machine which actually we put the actual cured adhesive on, we actually put force in newtons onto the adhesive itself, and what happens then is it literally compresses, and when it's actually at 23 degrees, the newtons of basically the breaking point was actually at 1700. Oh, it's actually come on now, so you'll see that now. So this is the first one that's been put in, is actually the cured sample at 23 degrees when it was actually stored and mixed. And as it's actually pressing down, it's putting breaking point on that, and it's literally reading shortly. It will actually read around about 1600. We did 7 tests, and the final one came out at 1700 newtons after just 24 hours. So you can see there, it's actually starting to break. So it's starting to crumble in the section there, but this is after 24 hours. We then did exactly the same test again with the same product, but stored at only 6 degrees. And you'll see it's actually starting to crack already. And it literally, that came out around about 194 newtons, far lower. And the highest out of the 7 samples was actually at 300 newtons. So it's actually, when using adhesives at the proper temperatures, it's 5 times stronger than it would be if it's actually only at 5 or 6 degrees. So this is where you can see the importance. If you're working in conditions 5 degrees or even lower, the adhesive itself is going to take a lot longer for it to set. What you've also got to consider there is also all the products. Not talking about, when we talk about cement-based powders, we're not talking about just adhesives. This also could be effective grouts, but not just cement-based products. This can actually, temperature could play a big vital point on epoxies, ready mixed adhesives, and even primers and admixtures. All these products themselves need to be over 5 degrees C. And also, preferably the substrate that you're going onto, you should be looking at 10 degrees. So 5 degrees airflow and rising, and the substrate temperature should be at 10 degrees to actually get the best benefits and the best methods. If you're working at 5 degrees or less, then you're going to have serious problems on your hands as far as the product performing to its full capability. With regards to, so in general, what you're looking at is, keep in mind as far as the substrate temperature should be at 10 degrees, and the air temperature you should be looking at 5 and rising. Also keep in mind as far as with storing the products, we're not just talking about the using of the products, but you sometimes store these products in your vans or on site. If the product's at freezing temperatures, so sub-zero temperatures, the products are not really suitable and therefore should not be used. If they're actually being in your vans and just chilled, what I would always recommend would be to take those products out of the van and put them indoors for at least 24 to also possibly 48 hours to get conditioned ready for use. Otherwise, if you're in a van, make sure that those materials are actually at the right temperatures. Don't leave them in the vans, because with things like ready mixed powders or leveling compounds and admixtures, some of the products can actually have visible look as far as separation, or with epoxies, when mixing, they're very stiff and very difficult to actually mix up and use. That's usually the test that you saw there was actually using standard setting. This is why during these winter months, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you actually move your products to rapid setting. Rapid setting products would obviously aid in helping you to get the job done quicker, but also even with rapid setting materials, these can still be affected by temperature. So where you've got products that normally set in 3 hours, if it's at temperatures at 5 degrees and rising or higher, it could actually take slightly longer to actually dry. So be aware and keep that in mind before you start considering grouting up and completing the actual project itself. On the lines of BAL products within the rapid setting categories, what I want to do today is actually go through preparation products. We've also got a couple of tile adhesives I want to show you as well. And we can touch on grouts and these type of weathers as well. Starting off with the leveling compounds, if you're not aware, we actually do 2 leveling compounds for internal use, which is BAL Level Fast and also a product called BAL Level Max. These 2 products themselves can both be used in temperatures above 5 degrees C, and will obviously allow the speedy starting of tiling the same day. Level Fast has actually a unique one, which we're going to demonstrate in a second, which was introduced not too long ago. It was actually December last year. The reason why we launched this is, one, because of time elements, but also during these winter month situations as well. Level Fast is actually a faster version of BAL Level Max. It actually applies in exactly the same way. It's a self-smoothing compound. You apply over your floor substrate between 2 mil onto a screed and 3 mil onto a timber floor, and that can be built up to 30 millimeters in one application. That material itself can actually be mixed up and used. You have a pot life of 10 to 15 minutes, and obviously in colder conditions above 5 degrees C and rising, you could have a slightly longer working time with that as well. Once it's actually applied and mixed up, you can apply it over your various different substrates, and literally that will harden and be able to walk on minimum of 30 minutes, but you normally start tiling at a minimum of 45 minutes. But keep in mind, those temperatures in cold conditions could rise, and it may take slightly longer, but you'll still be able to start the application of the tiling shortly afterwards. So, David very kindly mixed the Level Fast up. This actually is a 20 kilo bag. It requires 4.2 litres of water. It's a self-smoothing material. It also contains fibres within the mixture as well, so this is why it's good for timber floors. You can apply, it's not feather edge, so you've got to put at least a minimum of 2 mil. Using a float out the material over the area. Now, because this has only got a wet edge of 10 to 15 minutes, it's not something I would recommend using on larger applications, unless you've got a team of people where they've got people mixing and applying themselves. But the material can just literally float out over the area, like so. The fibres itself will actually stay within the actual compound itself, so it doesn't float to the surface. This is why it's also important that you put the right amount of water there. But the beauty about this is the fact that it allows the speedy application of the fixing shortly afterwards. You're looking at just minimum 45 minutes. Oh, there you go. So you can see as I'm applying this, the trowel marks literally dissipate over the area.
What's the wet edge of that one, Dave?
The wet edge of this is actually 10 to 15 minutes. So this is why, if you're working on your road, I would be probably looking at no more than probably 3-4 bags at the very most. So it's more designed for smaller sort of application in areas. So that's the actual Level Fast. Now, Level Max would actually apply in exactly the same way, but the beauty about that one, that can actually be pumped, so you can actually do very large areas. It's also got a wet edge of 30 minutes, and it actually is walkable after 3 hours. Again, as I said before, keep in mind the important bit here today and over the next certainly 9 weeks or so during the winter months is just make sure that you leave ample time. Don't just work with what's on the actual bag. Temperature does play a part. The higher the temperature, the better. Make sure the water is not freezing cold. It needs to be a minimum of 5 degrees C.
Dave, a couple of questions. First one from Pick Sterno asking, is it a good idea to use a blow heater to up the temperature of, say, a porch, or would that affect it in any way? So I presume they're talking about the Level Fast here. Or...
I mean, as far as if putting heating in the room will obviously also help, because the airflow is obviously looking at a minimum of 5 degrees C and rising. But honestly, it's more about the substrate itself. It amply should be trying to get at least 10 degrees or higher. Normally, as a rule, the general rule is the subfloor temperature is normally a couple of degrees lower than the actual air temperature.
I've got another question from John Park. It says, hello, sorry, just in case I missed something. So if you stored it in a garage, say the adhesive, then the temperature drops below freezing, then you're saying it's worthless,
yeah,
or you just need to bring it back to room temperature?
If it's chilled, you have the ability to actually save it by conditioning the actual product in the room and bring it back up to temperature. So obviously you need to make sure it's in a warm, dry, off the floor preferably as well, which is standard practice with any storing. It should be above 5 degrees C, off the floor, so you don't get any moisture. If moisture gets into the bag, then obviously that's where the issue lies. As I say, if it's actually freezing cold and it's actually frost got into the product, there it does run the risk as far as the product is no good. So it's always better, even in your garage, to make sure there's actually sufficient heating there, but more important, make sure that the product is not sitting on a cold surface, because as I said before, the substrate is obviously getting colder than the air temperature.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry, carry on.
So that's the leveling compounds. With regards to the adhesives, I know that some of you probably use standard setting, and this to a certain extent also applies to things like Flex One. Flex One, even though it dries in 6 hours, it is based upon a standard setting sort of system. I would certainly change that product to Rapid Flex One or Pourable One, which are the two products we're going to be next showing in a moment, certainly during this winter time. So with Rapid Flex One, the beauty about this is it's actually a 3-hour set, but where people always worry about the rapid setting going off too quickly, Rapid Flex One actually has a pot life of an hour. Keeping that in mind during sort of cold conditions above 5 degrees C and rising, you might even get a slightly longer working time pot life with the product itself, but keep in mind the set may take slightly longer than 3 hours, but it's certainly going to be a lot better than using a standard setting, which is minimum 16 or 24 hours. So what I've got here, David's mixed up the Rapid Flex One. Now, if you've not actually used this product before, because it's actually got an hour pot life, you can mix a full bag in one go. This is actually, consistency-wise, is actually designed for floor application. So it's actually got 5 litres of water in the actual bag itself. This gives you this creamy consistency, which allows you to be able to apply onto the floor itself. But the other good thing about this is at 20 degrees C and rising room temperature, you have an open time of 30 minutes. So that will stay wet, allowing you to fix more tiles down over a longer sort of area. So the beauty about this is where you may have used all the rapid setting products, you tend to mix a small amount, you spread a small amount, and then tile a small amount. This actually gives you the ability to spread a greater area and allowing you to still get solid bed fixing, get full good contact to the back of the tile. And the material itself at 5 litres, you can see you've got the ability to adjust, twist, and fix the tiles in place. And that after 3 hours minimum time, you can actually physically walk on that and start the actual grouting process itself. Also with the One Family range itself, in particular the One Family range, is all these products are actually white. We don't do a grey, we just literally do a white material. But the ability of this is now you buy one product that can be used all year round during the summer months as well as the winter. Even though some months it might go off a little bit quicker, you should be still looking around about 30 minutes sort of pot life, where normal room temperature you're looking at an hour, and again in cold conditions you may get a little bit longer out of it, but an hour pot life is really good from a point of view of fixing. This can also be applied on wall applications as well. The only thing is you would actually reduce the water amount slightly to give you the non-slip capability, but all that information is on the packaging, but also on our technical day sheets, which you can physically get access through the website itself. And also there will be videos on certain products as well that you can obviously tap into.
Would the open times and working times, they would go up even in sort of colder temperatures with this product as well?
They will. The thing is, even though it's rapid setting, any products, and it's not just BAL, cement-based products naturally, because they dry by hydration, and they are temperature sensitive as well, and obviously substrate sensitive, they will increase even with using rapid setting products. This is why it's important to change the selection from standard setting to rapid setting. That's not just in your adhesives, that's in your grouts as well, where possible. But important is to control the temperature where you possibly can. I understand it's always difficult, but one, if it's below 5 degrees C, it's not just about tiling, it's any building trade. You should be working in degrees below 5 degrees. But if you get it warmer, put some heat in the room, but more importantly, don't just think about the time when you start the fixing, think about the storing of the materials as well, where they've been stored. And the water that you use, if it's actually very, very cold, that also will have an impact on the actual setting of the actual products that you use.
How flexible is Rapidflex One?
Rapidflex One is within the actual classifications, it's an S1. So if you understand what S1 means, is it actually will deform between 2.5 and 5 mil over the length of the strip, which is around about 300 in width, in length, sorry. So that's a bit on the actual the adhesive stuff. So just to recap, just keep in mind as far as Flex One, I would be cautious on using those products certainly over the next few weeks while we're in the winter months, winter time. Always change maybe just for that period of time to Rapidflex One, and then obviously when you come to do the grouting, always consider using something like Micromax2, which is a rapid grout.
Presumably, if the temperature of the room, so if you're working in a domestic property, then Flex One would still perform as it would do.
If it's at room temperature, then it's fine. But it's all about if you're on site conditions where you haven't got the regular heat there, you've got to consider making sure that you're using rapid setting products, certainly in those cases, in those instances. If it's in a nice domestic sort of house where they've got heating, they've got controlled temperature there, and as long as you make sure that the products you use are stored in that environment, that will all help in towards actually getting the right sort of setting times that we're used to the rest of the year. One last one I want to go through on the adhesives, and that is Pourable One. Pourable One is actually our pourable type of adhesive designed for bigger, larger format tiles. I suppose nowadays, I remember a large format tile 30 years ago being 300 by 300. But we now consider a standard tile that we're fixing at 600. So 600 with 600 tiles and greater. Obviously, it's all about ensuring they get solid fixing. We do obviously, trowels that you use, products will aid in helping to achieve that solid fixing. But by having an adhesive that gives you the right rheology and wetting to the back of the tile, this Pourable One is actually the way to go forward.
A couple more questions, Dave, sorry. Firstly from Niall in Ireland, what are your thoughts on using Rapidflex One on a wall in colder temperatures?
Yes, you can. As I say, if you're in on site conditions where you can't control the heating in the same way, I would use Rapidflex One, but the water ratio of that would actually, if memory serves, you're looking around about 4.4 litres of water. Which would actually be the consistency required for non-slip for wall application using Rapidflex One. And
Colin asks, how safe are sealers and primers in the freezing weather if they get frozen solid? I don't know whether it means after application or before.
I have experienced that, Colin, with regards to one case where I pulled out a primer and literally was frozen, I couldn't get the material out. I had to throw that away because it's actually at the point where it's not chilled anymore, it's literally damaged the actual product itself. It's like, I know if you use it, you're taking the risk factor that there could actually be an error later. So the easiest thing to do is, if you're going to use any products, certainly now and when through the winter time, take them out of your vans, put them in storage above 5 degrees C, off the floor, where you possibly can, and just be a bit more mindful about your planning when it comes to storing the products prior to obviously using them. So, if you'd like to move to the camera there, Phil, what I've done here is very nicely mixed the Pourable One. Now, what makes the difference between this and the Rapidflex one, and I actually had a call literally today, is what some people may do is actually make the adhesive, wet it to enable and help get solid bed fixing or contact to the back of the tile. So what they do is they put more water in the adhesive itself. What I would advise in that particular situation, if you overwater the adhesive, that's actually has a knock-on effect on the strength of the material itself. Pourable One is actually physically designed. The consistency there is actually only got 4 litres of water. So it's actually got less water than the one I've just applied a moment ago, which is the Rapidflex one. That's got 5, this has actually got 4. This is more pourable, but also one of the beauties about this is you can literally trowel it out. Very easy because obviously it's wetted. Using the right trowel, so what I'm using a large format trowel in this particular case, but you'll notice the ribs themselves are actually holding up. Even though it's got more, it's actually wetted, but the beauty about it is as soon as you actually press contact to it, it actually flows out. So when you, what I've done here is just, not that you would do this on site, and please don't, but I've got a glass tile here, or plate, and literally press that down, you can see what you get with regards to the contact of the adhesive underneath the tile itself. And the bigger the tile, you can actually still be able to move it and twist it with ease. But one of the beauties about it, you can see that on the camera there, but you can literally see around the perimeter of the actual glass plate. In this case, all it would be a tile. It is actually brought the water around the edge. So because you moved it around, the water comes to the surface, flows out, contacts the back of the tile, and literally allows quicker, easier application, fixing, without the need, in all cases, of back buttering. It doesn't stop it completely. It all depends on how flat the background is, or how flat, or if the tile is slightly convexed or concaved, in other words, dished. This could obviously have impact on the contact coverage. So you should always pick a tile up in the first instance to check what coverage you're getting. And if you need to still apply this to the back, then do it. But this actually will speed up. If you can actually lay 600 by 600 or bigger with a large format trowel using Pourable One without the need of back buttering, you can get that job done in a lot quicker time. But also this can be built up to 25 mil in isolated areas as well. And it will still set in 3 hours, regardless of the thickness. But again, as I said before, just keep in mind temperature at colder conditions, it may exceed slightly. But it will certainly be dry for grouting later on that day, or certainly the following day, whichever.
Can you use it as a, you talked about using it as a leveller, can you use it as a leveller?
I would not, as a patch repair compound, yes. So if you've got any sort of holes in the floor, then you can actually physically apply, fill those areas and tile over the top, as long as you're no more than depths of 25 mil.
But not over larger areas.
But over large areas, I would always, as you saw in the demonstration a moment ago, use a leveling compound like Level Max or Level Fast. You'll get the actual levels far quicker than trying to build up the tiles with adhesive, which is very time consuming and also difficult.
What about going over underfloor heating cables, like heating mats?
It has been done in small sort of areas, but again, it's better if you can use encapsulate it in a compound, because that will flow in around the cables to make sure there's no actual pockets, no holes or hairs in the actual material. This can be used, but there's always that tendency that it may leave voids within between the cables and the tile when it's being installed.
What about natural stone, Dave, for that product?
Natural stone is always BAL Pourable One and even Rapid Flex One are the two products ideal for fixing natural stone. We would obviously recommend those because they actually have less water in the makeup of these products. So, such as Rapid Flex One is 5 litres, 4.4 on walls. Pourable One is only 4 litres. There's less water, so it won't have issues with regards to staining, but also the stone itself, there's less chance of it curling as well. So ideal for natural stone products.
What about externally, Dave? Which product would you recommend for external if you're tying onto a concrete base?
External, obviously, don't use it if it's below 5 degrees C, but the material itself, you could use Pourable One or Rapid Flex One for those external applications. Again, work on the principle of, for bigger format tiles, Pourable One is the better one, especially if you're fixing pavers and things like that as well. So you're sorting like 20mm porcelain and so on.
And what about levelling outside, Dave?
Levelling, we do actually do a product called Level Out, as well as we do a full BAL external range. But keep in mind, as far as certain at the moment, I mean, today where I am, outside has been around about 2-3 degrees. So it's not really suitable for tiling outside. But as long as the temperature is above 5, you can actually install pavers or tiles onto a concrete base with BAL Level Out, which is our levelling compound for external applications. That dries in 3 hours, and then you could use either Pourable One or Rapid Flex One to actually install porcelain tiles or tiles suitable for external and stone externally on the floor itself with no issues whatsoever.
Okay.
Right, so that's actually, if you look at now, we've covered off preparation, we've covered off adhesives. Last of all, I just want to focus upon grouts. Grouts themselves obviously is the last thing that you need to do. Keep in mind before you grout up, make sure that the adhesive is obviously dry before you grout up. This is the bit I was telling you earlier. If you're working in 5 degrees, 6 degrees, 8, that sort of temperatures, what you'll find in there is the adhesive may take slightly longer. So keep in mind 3 hours may turn to 3.5 or 4 or whatever. It's not just if the tile's not moving that you grout up. There may still be some residual moisture in the actual adhesive. And the grout itself is an important element from the point of view of, we've all come across and heard of things like effervescence. These are actually salts that actually come on the surface of the grout itself. These salts, effervescence actually comes in 2 forms. We have what we call primary effervescence, and that is actually where the water in the grout itself may have had too much, or it's been washed off with too much water, and that's created as salts on the surface of the cement, so it's minerals and so on. That can actually be removed by using an acid sort of base type of cleaner, but always follow the cleaning manufacturer's recommendations on the type of product and dilution rates and how it should be actually used. The other one that you can also get is secondary effervescence. Now, we do a product called Micromax2, which is effervescent free, but as far as secondary effervescence, it's not, you can still get effervescence there. What secondary effervescence is, if for those who aren't aware, is where you've got residual moisture in the background coming up, and that brings the salts through to the surface and causes that patchiness on the actual surface grout. But also, if you've got residual moisture in the adhesive because you've grouted up a little bit, obviously maybe 3 hours later, but the adhesive still got some residual moisture there, it will obviously can actually bring salts to the surface, which is why you may have come across effervescence during these winter months. So all I will say is, just where possible, keep in mind as far as try to let the adhesive dry a little bit longer and anything you do to raise the temperature of both the substrate temperature and the airflow temperature as well will obviously all aid in completing a successful job and no issues along the way.
What other grouts do we have in the range, Dave?
The grouts we have Micromax2 is obviously our rapid grout, which is actually the better one to go for during this time of the year. We also do other grouts called Rapidflex and also Rapidflex wide joint. These grouts themselves are actually suitable for Rapidflex is suitable for wall application, and Rapidflex wide joint is wall and floor. They can be used internal and external, but they are a 24-hour set. So the thing is with that is it will take obviously longer for it to harden, and obviously keep in mind as far as time is always the essence with any jobs. So certainly at the moment I would concentrate on Micromax2 certainly for the next month or so.
A couple of questions. Matthew asked, what's your best-selling product? And so that's the first question. And the second question from Mike Hamlet is, what's the recommended minimum temp for grouting in?
What's the
minimum temperature for grouting?
Well, as far as what's the best seller, there's actually many, but on the grout side, Micromax2 is the best selling grout within the BAL range. With regards to the temperature, and this doesn't apply to just grouts, this applies with any of the products that you'll be using. You must always, in all cases, the product itself must be applied above 5 degrees C. The water that you use should be at least 5 degrees and rising as well. And if, where possible, if you're any substrate background should be looking at a minimum of 10 if you can as well.
How long can you wait before you put the grout into normal use conditions in Micromax2? So after the set time.
So say again.
The set time of Micromax2.
The set time of Micromax2, as I said, was rapid setting. This actually will dry in 2 to 3 hours under sort of normal conditions to room temperature. That might be delayed slightly, but not too much to harm issues with regards to finishing the job before foot traffic can obviously leave.
If it was in a bathroom or a shower room for Micromax2, it states in the packaging you have to leave it 2 weeks before you can use it, and is that the British standard?
With shower areas, you'll notice on a lot of our technical data sheets and on packaging when it comes to power showers or shower areas or wet rooms, we put that on. This is actually a standard. This is a British standard. It's not something we've come up with and that. With any shower, it's actually recommended, and this doesn't apply to just commercial, this applies to any shower system. You should always leave the shower to be switched off and not used for at least a minimum of 2 weeks. That's not because of the products, it's because as you can appreciate, all products dry, but they also continue to cure. So as the time goes on, they get harder and harder. That 2 week window allows the whole system to dry out before you physically start putting that shower into use. Okay, if there's any other questions?
Just the only thing, I think you touched on epoxies and things like that, and how because I know they're affected by a chemical reaction, but are they affected by the cold temperatures as well?
Yeah, with regards to, I mentioned at the very start, just to mention again, with regards to epoxy grouts, if you're looking at using epoxy grouts, certainly at the moment, it's good, and again, making sure that it's actually been conditioned, so it's at least above 5 degrees in airflow, and temperature, the floor itself is 10. The material itself, if it is actually stored at 5 degrees, it can still be, even at that point, be a lot stiffer. So it will be a lot more difficult to actually blend and mix the material. But you can actually do that as long as it's above 5 degrees. But you might feel that the materials are actually slightly different in mixing in comparison to if you're mixing at room temperature. So just make sure you thoroughly mix it, use it, and apply it in small areas. Just on the other side, on the flip coin, on hotter temperatures with epoxies, because of it actually heats up for you to cure, and the mass of epoxy that's actually in the pot when you mix it up it can actually go off a lot quicker, and it will also be a lot thinner, so it's a lot runnier, and more, obviously it can run out of the joint if you're not careful. So again, always keep, where possible, to keep the material stored in the room temperatures, not too hot, but also, well, what the session's all about, not too cold.
What about sealants, Dave? Using sealants like Micromax sealant, how's that affected by cold?
That itself, again, if it's not stored correctly, it would be quite stiff and very difficult to actually, for the material to actually come through the nozzle itself. But the key thing about it, but the key thing, and I've seen it happen before, we all store our products in the van overnight, and the oils at times are a little bit chilly, and they will be affected by temperature, even though you're going to be using them in maybe a warmer room. It needs to get acclimatized to those areas. So where possible, think ahead. But when you purchase the materials, either purchase on the day before you go do the job, or if you are going to buy the materials prior to start the job, where possible, try and put it in the location in the right temperatures, ready for before starting work. So, any other questions? Opportunity now for the last few minutes. If you say hi and ask a question, you'll get one of the thermal mugs. No? Okay then. Well, thank you very much for listening, everyone. I hope that's been useful for you. Obviously, ask if you have any other questions, always contact the technical support line, and obviously we can speak in person. And obviously we're always on hand to actually support you in the field through obviously moisture tests, recommendations and so on. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you.